Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Rafael Vasquez Guzman. I'm the Executive Director of Lideres del Futuro Avanzando, a nonprofit organization in Northern California. And today we want to talk about advanced parole for DACA recipients. We know that in June, there is going to be a court hearing in Texas once again in front of the same judge who already declared that a DACA was not to be available for new applicants a couple of years ago. And there were appeals to that decision, and eventually the United States Supreme Court sent that case back to the same court in Texas. And therefore, on June 2nd, there's going to be a hearing to determine whether or not DACA is a legal program or whether it should disappear. When talking with experts on immigration, we keep hearing the same thing. It is very likely, unfortunately, that DACA will be deemed to be illegal, and therefore that program may disappear. The judge has multiple options as to what he is going to do. He could just say the program ends today, and it is unlikely that the decision will be made on that same day, but a few weeks later, possibly by the end of June, a decision will be made available. But the judge could say the program ends today, all work permits, all DACA permits have been ended, and therefore those individuals would lose their jobs in many situations. Or the judge could say, which is most likely at this moment, that those with work permits would be able to keep them until they naturally expire, whether it is in a month, whether it is in 2 years for those who recently renewed. The judge could also say those who are in the process of renewal will be the last ones allowed to renew. We don't have all the details, but the most likely scenario, according to some of the experts, is that the judge will say the program is not valid, but we will allow individuals to keep their permits until this expire. And today we want to talk about advanced parole, what it is, what is not, and why this is important. Advanced parole is a program that is part or is connected to DACA and allows individuals to travel outside of the United States legally and to legally come back. This is helpful in many situations because many individuals, when they come back, they can adjust status because perhaps they got married to a US citizen or resident. And as a result of that, because of that marriage, they can adjust status within the United States without having to leave the country and wait for their visa there. This also may be helpful for other individuals who may need to leave the country and come back and then ask for a permit, a visa that is requested by their employer. And so, in order to do that, some individuals may have to leave the country and come back. There are several reasons why someone might be able to do advanced parole. Now, Lideres del Futuro Avanzando has been doing advanced parole applications for several years now. Just this year, 2023, we have done about 7. Most of the time, we do humanitarian related applications. This means that mom, dad, grandma, grandpa are in another country and the DACA recipient is requesting permission to go see them in their home country. And this is helpful because sometimes individuals who haven't been to their home country for multiple years, sometimes 15, 20 years, are able to go back and, if nothing else, say their goodbyes. Many of the humanitarian visas is because mom, dad, grandma, or grandpa are about to pass on. And it is essential that they go and say their goodbyes and take care of any and all paperwork that is necessary. The other form of advanced parole is job related. This is when individuals go out of the country and again, they go not because they're trying to benefit out of something, but their employer writes a letter and says, our job is, or maybe our business is in trouble if we don't fix this. And as a result of that, these individuals are able to go out of the country. An example of this is an individual that we assisted in order to be able to go out of the country because their employer needed to, instead of do contracts with two companies, do a contract with one company only. But this individual needed to go to Mexico because he was the only employee that spoke Spanish. And he needed to go and verify that the company that was claiming that they could produce a product for the company that would no longer need a second company to also produce that product, and that the facilities were adequate, so on and so forth. And so that's a job related parole. And the third one is educationally related. And we don't have many of those cases. Lideres del Futuro Avanzando has done humanitarian related paroles and job related paroles. And again, there are other additional benefits from doing advanced parole, but the important piece is this one, humanitarian and job related. Who should definitely not apply for advanced parole? Anyone who was detained at the border when they originally came in and they were fingerprinted, individuals who also have accusations of either DUIs or convictions of DUIs, sexually related crimes, child abuse, elderly abuse. All of those individuals should not do advanced parole. And this is coming from our attorneys. And those individuals, when somebody comes to Lideres del Futuro and says, hey, I want to do advanced parole, we ask all these questions. And if anybody has any of those cases that we mentioned and a few others, we say, let us refer you to an attorney because you need to verify with them that this is okay. And so what is the documentation to do advanced parole? I'll focus on the humanitarian piece. First of all, the individual would have to file the I-131, which is about a 5 to 6 page document that needs to be filled out. And also we do the G1145 notification of application. That's the one that after you submit the paperwork, then they send you a receipt. The other piece that is important here when you talk about advanced parole is that there's two forms of advanced parole, especially in the humanitarian piece that is important that we understand. The typical advanced parole is you fill out the forms, you put all the documents in there, you mail it out, and it takes on average between 4.5 months to 6 months for them to approve it. And then the emergency advanced parole is the one where you end up filling out all the paperwork, you put it in an envelope, and you call immigration, you make an appointment. And right now, at least here in Northern California, it's taking about a week and a half to 2 weeks before you get an emergency appointment. And then you go in there and you wait, and it takes 3 to 4 hours waiting period. And the important piece here is if you are asking for emergency advanced parole, that means if you get it, you have to leave the country today or tomorrow. It's not one of those things that you get approved and then you say, oh, I'm going to ask my employer to see if I can go in 2 weeks. That doesn't work. They will not approve that. So besides the documentation here, what you need is a copy of the work permit for DACA, both sides of the permit. You're going to need the copy of the A21D letter of approval, the most recent one, and the letter explaining the need for travel. So if it is for humanitarian reasons, the doctor that is taking care of mom, dad, grandma, or grandpa needs to write a letter. If it is a doctor in Mexico, it has to be in letterhead. It has to explain the reason of the illness. It could be serious cases of diabetes, heart problems, maybe someone had a brain tumor, something of the kind. And, what are the consequences? How long is the situation, the medical situation? Is it improving? Is it getting worse? And the fact that the patient is asking to see their grandson or their child, whomever it is. It also has to have the name of the doctor, the license to practice, their signature, and again, the name of the patient clearly that matches the information that is going to be in the records here. The other thing that is going to be needed is a letter from the DACA recipient explaining the connection and the need to go to visit, again, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whomever it is. And in some situations, for example, we had somebody who is a nurse and they needed to go take care of grandma because grandma needed to have emergency surgery. And there was nobody else there who could take off the bandages and all of the other things that needed to be done. And so that letter is important. A copy of the passport for the DACA recipient from their home country that is still valid. The work permit for DACA also needs to be valid for at least 3 months beyond the day that the person is going to go visit. So that's important. And 2 pictures, US passport size, a check or money order for $575. This is if you're going to mail it. If you're going to go to an emergency visit at the nearest immigration office, please be aware they do not accept money orders there, only personal checks and credit card payments. And then you're going to need the birth certificates. For humanitarian reasons, you're going to need your birth certificate that connects you to your parents, for example. Or if it is for grandma and grandpa, some of the new birth certificates, specifically for Mexico, they only include the person and their parent. They may not include the grandparent, the newest ones. So in that situation, if you're going to go visit grandma, then it's going to be yours that connects you to your parent, and then that parent that connects you to the grandparent. And you need to translate all that information. The letter from the doctor needs to be translated, and a few other pieces there. And again, if you're going to do the regular advance parole, you then mail it, and then it's going to take 4.5 months to 6 months to get it approved. If it's emergency, you then have to call immigration and make the appointment. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions in order to determine why is it an emergency. And then once that's determined, they'll give you a date, a time. You need to show up. And again, be aware that if it is approved, you need to leave that day or the next day. Then there is advance parole via work. And again, we have done this. It is possible. Some immigration attorneys told us that they didn't think it was possible, that they were not approving it. We have done multiple of them. The most recent was an emergency advance parole for work, because again, it's the business that is being negatively affected by the individual not being able to travel. So it's the business asking for the individual to leave the country, take care of something for the business, and then come back. So the employer must write that letter as to how they are being affected negatively or will be affected negatively if the individual doesn't go to this other country. And again, if the individual is from Mexico, it doesn't mean the individual needs to go to Mexico. It means that perhaps the individual needs to go to Japan or needs to go to England or needs to go to other places. Then the DACA recipient needs to write their own letter explaining why they need to travel, and again, how this will eventually benefit the business they're representing. They're going to need to fill out the form I-131. Again, it costs $575. It can be done as an emergency advance parole. It can be done as a regular advance parole. They're going to need both sides of their work permit. They're going to need the passport from their home country that is still valid, obviously. They're going to need the 2 US passport size pictures. And they're going to need, again, that letter of approval, A21D. Okay, so there are ways to do this. And if it's the regular, again, it's going to take some time to get it approved. If the business needs something done right away, then it's going to be an emergency one. And that's where the individual would call immigration. And if immigration agrees to give them an emergency appointment, then they would go to their nearest location here, north of San Francisco in Sonoma County. The individual would end up going to San Francisco to the immigration center, and they would be able to just submit their paperwork, wait, and if approved, they would be able to travel right away. It's important that individuals are aware that this is possible. At this moment, Lideres del Futuro Avanzando is working on an educational version of this, and we will have more details in a few weeks, maybe even in a couple of weeks. This is being produced for you all on Tuesday, May 30th, 2023. But again, perhaps even within a week, we will have an update on this. And so if you are in Sonoma County or surrounding areas and you would like support with your advance parole, Lideres del Futuro is able to do this work typically on Saturdays by appointment only. It takes an hour to be able to do this, each one of them. And we are happy to teach you how to do your own. But it's also in an individual basis because it's case by case. And with that, we wanted to keep this somewhat short, so thank you for your patience. And we want to remind you that Lideres del Futuro is offering scholarships to students who are graduating from Sonoma County high schools, and therefore we welcome your donations. You can scan the QR code here, or you can go to our website, lideresdelfuturo.org, and there's a section where you can donate. There's multiple funds that you can donate to. We invite you to commit to donating, whether it is $5 or $10 a month. People spend more than $10 a week buying Starbucks. In the same way, you can commit to helping our organization that provides scholarships, summer programs, and more. Our website is being updated, but you're welcome to check it out now. We also want to remind the community in Sonoma County that we have the Luis Vasquez Middle School program for 7th and 8th graders. Again, individuals can scan the QR code, or they can go to our website, Lideres del Futuro, and scan the QR code there. And that is going to happen on June 12th through the 16th, June 19th through the 23rd. We're going to have the Luis Vasquez High School program, where we are going to be collaborating with Redwood Credit Union in order to provide a lot of different trainings. Redwood Credit Union will do a training on finances, but we have a lot of other trainings that we are going to provide for students. So with that, we want to thank you for taking the time being with us. Lideres del Futuro Avanzando. My name is Rafael Vasquez Guzman. I am the executive director of this nonprofit organization in Northern California. Our website, lideresdelfuturo.org. And remember, we are on TikTok and Instagram every day, putting a 15-second quick video to promote mental health. We do one in English, we do one in Spanish. And with that, we want to also remind you that we are on KBBF Bilingual Radio, that is kbbf.org, or anywhere in the world you can listen, or you can tune in if you're in Sonoma County or one of the 17 counties surrounding Sonoma County at 89.1 FM. And we've been in KBBF, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary in 2023. Lideres del Futuro has been there for almost 13 years, broadcasting every Thursday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And with that, we thank you for your time.